He was called the Scourge of the Spanish, a man whose name struck fear into the hearts of sailors and settlers across the Caribbean. His real name was Jean David No, but history remembers him by his fearsome moniker, François L'Aulnay. His story is one of poverty, brutality, and a relentless quest for fortune that left a bloody mark on the golden age of piracy. Our story begins around 1630 in Les Sables-d'Olonne, a coastal town in France. Born into a poor family, young Jean David saw little future in his homeland. Like many ambitious but destitute young men of his time, he looked to the New World for opportunity. His journey began not as a pirate, but as an indentured servant. He was transported to the Caribbean, likely to the island of Martinique, where he worked on a plantation for several years. Indentured servitude was a harsh life, often little better than slavery. The labor was grueling, the conditions were brutal, and many did not survive their term. But Jean David No did survive. He endured his servitude, and upon gaining his freedom, he was a man changed by hardship, hardened and resentful. He drifted to the untamed island of Hispaniola, which was divided between Spanish and French control. He found his way to the French part, known as Saint-Domingue, a haven for outcasts, hunters, and buccaneers. Here, he joined the ranks of the buccaneers, hunters of wild cattle and pigs who smoked the meat on wooden frames called boucans. This lifestyle was tough and dangerous, constantly skirmishing with the Spanish who claimed the entire island. It was here that No honed his survival skills, his marksmanship, and his deep-seated hatred for the Spanish. His skill and ruthlessness did not go unnoticed. The French governor of Tortuga, a small island fortress off the coast of Hispaniola and a major buccaneering hub, saw potential in No. He decided to give him his first real shot at the life of a privateer, entrusting him with a small ship. L'Aulnay, as he now called himself after his hometown, was unleashed upon the Spanish Main. His early raids were successful, and he quickly built a reputation for being both effective and exceptionally cruel. But fortune is a fickle mistress. On one expedition near Campeche in modern-day Mexico, L'Aulnay and his crew were ambushed by Spanish forces. The battle was a disaster. Most of his men were killed, and L'Aulnay himself was wounded. To escape certain death, he smeared himself with the blood and gore of his fallen comrades and hid amongst the dead. Once the Spanish soldiers left, he disguised himself, and with the help of some slaves, managed to escape back to Tortuga. This near-death experience did not temper his ambition. It fueled his rage. He was a man with nothing, who had lost everything, and he blamed the Spanish for it. His quest was no longer just for gold. It was for vengeance. Back in Tortuga, he and another buccaneer, Michel de Bosco, put together a new plan. They acquired a couple of small canoes, and with a crew of just over 20 men, they hatched an audacious plot. They paddled to the coast of Cuba, near the town of Los Cayos. They knew a Spanish ship, laden with cacao, indigo, and a significant amount of silver, was due to depart. The ship was a warship, armed with cannons and a crew of over 90 soldiers, sent specifically to deal with the pirate threat. Any sane captain would have seen this as an impossible target. But L'Aulnay was not sane in the conventional sense. He was brilliant and daring. Under the cover of darkness, his small band of buccaneers stealthily rowed towards the massive Spanish vessel. They boarded it with such speed and surprise that the Spanish crew was thrown into chaos. In the brutal close-quarters fight that followed, the buccaneers were victorious. What happened next cemented L'Aulnay's reputation for unparalleled cruelty. According to Alexander Exquemelin, a buccaneer who served with L'Aulnay and later wrote the book, The Buccaneers of America, L'Aulnay had the captured Spanish soldiers brought before him one by one. With his own cutlass, he personally beheaded nearly all of them, allegedly licking the Spanish blood from his blade after each execution. He spared one man, sending him back to the governor of Havana with a chilling message. he would never give quarter to any Spaniard. The capture of the Spanish ship made L'Ollonais a legend. Buccaneers flocked to sail under his black flag. His next target was even more ambitious: the wealthy Spanish city of Maracaibo, located on the coast of what is now Venezuela. Maracaibo was thought to be impregnable. Its entrance was guarded by a narrow channel, protected by a heavily armed fortress. L'Ollonais assembled a fleet of 8 ships and a crew of around 650 men. In 1666, they arrived at the mouth of the bay. Instead of a direct assault, L'Ollonais landed his men on the coast out of sight of the fort's cannons. They marched overland and attacked the fortress from its weaker landward side. The Spanish garrison, caught completely by surprise, was overwhelmed and abandoned the fort. With the main defense cleared, L'Ollonais' fleet sailed into Lake Maracaibo, but they found the city of Maracaibo eerily empty. The residents, warned of his approach, had fled into the surrounding jungle with their valuables. L'Ollonais was furious. He sent his men out in hunting parties to track down the terrified citizens. For the next 2 months, Maracaibo became a landscape of horror. The Buccaneers systematically tortured the people they captured to force them to reveal where their treasures were hidden. The methods described by Exquemelin are sickening, involving racks, burning cords, and unspeakable acts of violence. L'Ollonais himself was said to have participated with relish, his cruelty knowing no bounds. After plundering every last coin from Maracaibo, L'Ollonais wasn't finished. He sailed his fleet further into the lake to the nearby town of Gibraltar. The defenders of Gibraltar put up a much fiercer fight, but they were eventually overcome by the sheer ferocity of the Buccaneers. The sack of Gibraltar was even more brutal than that of Maracaibo. For weeks, the town was subjected to looting, burning, and torture. By the time L'Ollonais and his men finally departed, they had amassed a colossal fortune in coins, silver plate, silk, and other goods, totaling around 260,000 pieces of 8. When they returned to Tortuga, they were greeted as heroes. The wealth was divided, and a massive celebration ensued, with the pirates spending their ill-gotten gains on drink and debauchery. But for a man like L'Ollonais, a life of leisure was impossible. The lust for gold and blood was insatiable. He soon organized an even larger expedition, a grand fleet with over 700 men, aimed at plundering the coast of Central America. This would be his final voyage. The expedition started poorly. After weeks of being becalmed, they ran short on supplies. They managed to sack the town of Puerto Cabello, but found little treasure. Morale plummeted. L'Ollonais' reputation, once a magnet for recruits, was now being questioned. His fleet was then caught in a storm, and his flagship was wrecked on a reef off the coast of Honduras. Stranded and desperate, the once mighty Buccaneer was reduced to a castaway. He and his remaining crew were forced to build makeshift rafts to try and continue their journey. They were relentlessly harassed by local Spanish forces and their indigenous allies. His force dwindled. In one infamous encounter, L'Ollonais captured 2 Spanish prisoners, demanding they show him a safe route. When they refused, Exquemelin wrote that L'Ollonais grew enraged, drew his cutlass, and cut open the chest of one of the prisoners, pulled out his heart, and began to gnaw on it, telling the other he would do the same if he didn't talk. This act of barbarism, even if exaggerated, shows the depths of his desperation and depravity. Eventually, L'Ollonais and a small group of his most loyal men managed to get a raft seaworthy and sailed south, hoping to find a way back to Tortuga. Their luck had finally run out. They landed in the Darien region of modern-day Panama, an area inhabited by the indigenous Kuna people. The Kuna were known to be fiercely independent and hostile to all outsiders, especially the Spanish and those who sailed with them. What happened next is a matter of historical debate, but the most widely accepted account comes from Exquemelin. According to him, L'Ollonais and his men were captured by the Kuna warriors. There, the man who had inflicted so much pain and suffering met a terrifyingly brutal end. He was torn to pieces, his body parts thrown into a fire, and his ashes scattered to the wind. It was a savage end for a savage man. The legacy of François Lalinaï is a dark and complex one. He was not a romantic rogue like the pirates often portrayed in fiction. He was a product of a harsh and violent world, a man driven by greed and a profound, burning hatred. His tactical brilliance was matched only by his monstrous cruelty. He was a butcher, a torturer, and one of the most successful and feared pirates of his time. His story serves as a brutal reminder that the golden age of piracy was not golden for its victims, and that behind the legends of treasure and adventure, there often lies a reality of unimaginable violence and human suffering. Thank you for watching. If you found this dive into the dark side of history interesting, please like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell for more stories from the past.